Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The best race weekend on the Formula One calendar is here. That's right, the United States Grand Prix, hosted in Austin, Texas at Circuit of the Americas. I cannot believe we're back here already. It feels just like yesterday that I was sitting in the grandstands watching these drivers race around Dakota. It is one of, if not the most exciting weekends on the calendar for me personally. This will be the fourth year in a row that we've managed to make it for the Grand Prix weekend. It's an unbelievable experience, and while the sun may beat the daylight out of you, it is absolutely one you must see in person if you are able to. It is so much fun, and back again is the sprint format. That's right, it is non-stop action from start to finish of the weekend. We're here to talk about our predictions. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go ahead, let's jump on into this thing. Predictions for the US Grand Prix always go so good. I mean, it's really exciting to get to make these predictions knowing that in just a few short days, I'm going to be there on boots on the ground to see these predictions come true live and in person. This week we have the addition of a a return of a prediction. Since it is a sprint weekend, in between our qualifying predictions and our race podium, we will be making our prediction for the sprint winner, so keep an eye out for that. But before we hop in, I know there are only a handful of rounds left in the 2025 season, but if you're interested in joining us for the remainder of the 2025 season as well as the 2026 season and beyond, go ahead, head to the link down below, join the Discord, and you can get your predictions in for the championship we host in our small little community here. So we'd love to have you. But let's go ahead, let's jump on into these predictions. We're going to be making predictions for our biggest positive surprise, our biggest disappointments, our qualifying top three, our sprint winner, our race podium, and as always, we will wrap it up with our one crazy prediction. Without further ado, let's go ahead, jump on into this thing with our biggest positive surprise. All right, let's jump on into this with our biggest positive surprise, and for better or for worse, for going against what I know is my better judgment, I'm going with a team this week. I'm going with a team that I believe cannot get much worse than they were not but a couple of weeks ago. A team that for whatever reason always seems to go very well around Circuit of the Americas, and a team and a pair of drivers that I refuse to believe can't get more out of this car. That's right, I'm going with Scuderia Ferrari for my biggest positive surprise. Now I can already hear what you're saying. Why? And the answer is pure unadulterated hopium, as well as refusing to believe that it has to get better for them, right? Like, I refuse to believe that they're gonna have another weekend where they were very obviously left with a level of despair unbeknownst, at least since I started watching back in 2022. It is a fascinating result to watch them go from Singapore to Coda. It is a fascinating experience for me to see what they did in Singapore and then go, yes, biggest positive surprise for sure. Just hear me out, okay? Just hear me out. This is definitely the, how to put it? This is definitely the big hopium and copium in me that I can't not look at the results they've had the last couple of years at Coda. And even if they're not bringing upgrades to fix their completely redesigned 2025 car, I have to believe they've at least learned a little bit when it comes to running a Coda, especially since it's been a sprint weekend here the last couple of years. I have to believe they'll do a little bit better. They will inevitably prove me wrong. You will inevitably laugh at me. But regardless, Ferrari, don't mess this up for me. You are my pick for biggest positive surprise. As we move on now to my pick for biggest disappointment, we're taking a bit of a different tact than we did for the biggest positive surprise. My pick for biggest disappointment this week is a bit of a reverse psychology pick. I've done this in the past and it's worked out for me occasionally, although there are a couple of times it middles me and I hate everything about it. My biggest disappointment this weekend is another team. It is my team. It is the Haas F1 team. And this is it a reverse psychology against the universe? Yes. Will I be disappointed when I inevitably get a point here? Yes. Will it be worth it? Maybe. It depends on how the rest of the weekend goes. But this is sort of like betting against your favorite team to, that way you quote unquote leave happy no matter what. Picking against them in a try and prove, force the universe to give me something good. is a tack that has worked for me in the past, but it has also most definitely not worked for me in the past as well. So is this weekend a little all over the place already? Yes. Does the United States Grand Prix have a weird air about it this weekend? Yes. Do I think that's going to come to my advantage? I don't know. But either way, I'm excited to see it all go down in person. Haas historically has done decently. Last year, we probably should have seen a double points finish in the Grand Prix. Nico Hulkenberg, I think, finished 8th or 7th or something like that, and Kevin Magnussen just outside the points in 11th, and realistically should have finished in the points considering how good they looked. I believe it was a double points finish in the sprint as well, so they should, kind of in the same way that Ferrari should have a lot of good data in a US Grand Prix sprint weekend. There's just something about the Haas car this year, very similarly to the Ferrari, that I don't think these two drivers have fully wrapped their heads around it. If this was a situation in which Kevin Magnussen was still in the car, I'd feel a lot better. If it was a situation where Nico Hulkenberg was still in the car, I'd feel a lot better. But with this particular driver pairing, I'm not so sure. So I'm rounding out my basket here. Haas, I'm very sorry. Please, for the love of God, prove me wrong. You are my pick for biggest disappointment. All right, let's move on now to qualifying top 3. This is qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday, the qualifying that will take place post-sprint race on Saturday. As a very clear distinction, as we obviously have 2 qualifying sessions to go this weekend. The P3 in the qualifying session on Saturday, I'm going with Oscar Piastri. And now I know Oscar hasn't been qualifying particularly well as of late these last few weekends. Or, well, I guess that's not necessarily true, but at the same time, he definitely has not looked as on the pace as McLaren has looked at points this season. But that said, he will have a single qualifying session already under his belt, as well as a full sprint race to sort of get bedded into COTA and start to get the mojo back. But at the same time, his mojo has been off, and so at this point, I think it's going to be considered a good qualifying session. But at the same time, he has not necessarily always qualified the best at COTA at the same time. So it's got to get interesting to see what happens. But at the same time, can't keep him off the top 3. So unfortunately, it will be a second row start for me. But at the same time, this feels like the right spot for Oscar, at least as of right now. As we move on to my pick for P2, I'm going with Lando Norris. In a very similar vein, I think this is going to be a weekend all about carrying momentum from one session to another, and considering this will be the 4th session of the weekend, as well as the 3rd competitive session of the weekend, it just feels like all the drivers are going to be bedded in. They're going to know what works, what doesn't work. They're going to be able to make those tweaks to try and eke out a little bit here or there depending on the conditions that we see. And so this is another instance where I can't not put the fastest car, the constructor's winning car, in the top 3 and on the front row. And so we'll go with Lando Norris, just like we saw last year where he started on the front row as well. But who will be starting ahead of him? Who will be on pole position this weekend around Circuit of the Americas? I'm going with Max Verstappen. This feels like the prime position, especially given all of the McLaren drama that we've seen since the end of Singapore, to just put it a little pole position out there. This will be after the sprint race. There'll be a little pole position. All eyes will be on the papaya, and I think Max might swoop in at the death and really put a damper on that parade and really make it very interesting, because we've seen what Max is capable of, especially on lap 1, turn 1 here at Circuit of the Americas. So it's going to get very, very interesting if this comes true. I, for one, will be all for it because I think it will give us a good show. But there you have it, guys. My qualifying top 3, a Oscar Piastri P3, a Lando Norris P2, and a Max Verstappen pole position. All right, let's go ahead and quickly do our sprint winner. This is not necessarily one that really, I think, takes a lot of explanation. I think this is going to be an instance of who can bet a good qualifying session in early, especially coming in on a Friday, and who can take advantage of a sprint format, which ideally does not, yield a lot of aggressive moves and a lot of potentially damaged cars. This is going to be a situation of who can survive, pull out a little bit of a gap, and march away to the finish, especially in the hot summer heat here we have in Texas. And so my sprint winner this weekend, the return of the sprint races here in the last handful of weekends on the season, is Lando Norris. This feels like a situation in which we've seen Lando do very well here the last couple of seasons. We saw him take pole position last year, but ultimately not take the win for one reason or another. But at the same time, I think this is going to be one where it will irk some people and fans of some drivers, but I think this will be an instance where Lando Norris wins the sprint but at the same time, with only 8 points for a win and single point decreasing increments from there, it won't be the most impactful unless something crazy does happen. But at the same time, I think this will be a Lando Norris win, and it will leave a lot of people very divided on that result. So we'll see what happens, but Lando Norris, pretty safe pick, I think, for a sprint win here around Circuit of the Americas. All right, let's go ahead, move on. Our race podium here at Circuit of the Americas, 50 something odd laps here at Coda. I probably should know that. It's like 52, 58, something like that. It's in the, somewhere in the 50s. It's going to be very interesting, especially if my qualifying predictions come correct. I know they very rarely do, but I love imagining these sorts of scenarios because we have a Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, little front row start for us, just for us. Everyone who's there, all 400,000 of us, just for us, no one else, just for us, to see a march up towards Big Red, to see what happens into turn one, an uphill left-hander to downhill off camber exit to turn one. Oh, the scenes that we saw last year, Max diving down the inside because Lando refused to cover the inside for some reason, and off they go, and Charles Leclerc marches off to victory. It was a dramatic move. A lot of things can happen into turn one here at Circuit of the Americas. It is going to get very spicy. Whoever gets a good launch is going to have a position of all positions. The exit down towards turn two, the long right-hander towards the S's. Oh, the scenes are going to be immaculate. Immaculate. I cannot wait. I've been talking about this race since Singapore ended. The way that the storylines have bedded out, the way that Max all of a sudden has looked very, very good again, it is going to be chef's kiss. McLaren in the mud, Max Verstappen seemingly back. Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be incredible scenes. But let's go ahead and let's focus up the race podium here at Circuit of the Americas in P3 at the United States Grand Prix. Lando Norris. We have seen him do better in instances this season where he gets very, very good launches off the line and has very good starts, actually making up positions. At the same time, Circuit of the Americas turn one is such an interesting corner because it also feeds out the pit exit. And so it is so wide that you realistically can take about almost any line you want to into turn one. And when you have 20 cars barreling down towards turn one, where you put your car is tantamount to the race win, as we saw last season. It is going to get very, very interesting to see who picks right and who picks wrong. It's going to be very, very interesting to see who from behind, maybe the front two rows, tries to make a bit of a move, if at all. It's going to get fascinating. This could be an instance where starting on the front row, Lando plays it a little bit too safe and potentially loses a couple of positions. And at that point, we've seen what can happen if you lose position, especially to your teammate. So we'll see. But a P3 for Lando, I think, would still be very good, but not when you have Oscar Piastri finishing P2 this weekend. That's right, I have Oscar Piastri pegged for the second step of the podium. I think this is an instance where we see Oscar fight a little more. I don't think we're going to see the true villain arc that a lot of people have been begging to see from Oscar since Singapore finished. I think this will be an instance where we'll start to see them start to ratchet up the intensity just a little bit, especially as weekends churn here and we get closer and closer to the end of the season. That aggression is going to turn up slowly. I don't think we're going to go from 0 to 100 this weekend, but at the same time, we're going to see a little bit more of an aggressive Oscar Piastri, especially considering the fact that the Constructors' Championship is already officially locked up. So now the only thing left to fight for between these two drivers is the World Championship. It is going to be scenes. The cinema will be absolute. I will be seated for it and enjoying every moment. But that leaves only my winner for the US Grand Prix, and it is Max Verstappen. This, I think, is going to be the biggest case for Max to continue to chip away points against the two McLarens, as he, although still very far out of the bubble, the immediate bubble of winning a World Drivers' Championship, is not too far away. And this is going to be an instance where, if all goes well for him and the two McLarens start squabbling, he can drive off into the distance, build that gap, and march off to a victory, continuing to churn points and take out the gap between him and currently Lando Norris in P2 in the Drivers' Championship. So it's going to get interesting, but I think this is definitely a plausible solution. And unless McLaren go full 100 to 0 and really rein in their guys, it could get spicy. That's all I'm saying. But there we have it, guys. My race podium. a Max Verstappen win, an Oscar Piastri P2, and a Lando Norris P3. What do you think? And then last but not least, our one crazy prediction. Let's move away from the sharp end of the grid. We've talked about them enough. My one crazy prediction is about Williams, in fact. And it's doing something they haven't done since the Monaco Grand Prix way back in May of this year in Monaco. Since then, they have never done this, and I'm predicting it to come true here at Circuit of the Americas. It is a double points finish for Williams. This kind of shocked me, but I did kind of then, when I was looking back and researching this, remembered their torrid 4 or 5 race weekend stretch where I think Alex or Carlos DNF'd on lap 1 2 races in a row, and it was awful. So they were all over the place. Hasn't been since Monaco when they finished P9 and P10 where they finished double points for the team. I think this is going to be another instance where I think their car this season and the way they built it has suited these sort of high, these high speed corners, these fast flowing sections, as well as a little bit of the technical sections as well. We saw in Baku, obviously the car performed very decently, and although Coda is a little bit of a different beast, I think you saw a little bit of the same things that you would see at a circuit like Circuit of the Americas. So I think it could suit the Williams very well. I think it's been about time we see a very good weekend from them from start to finish, and I think both drivers are well tuned at this point in time to put in those sort of results. So we'll see what happens. I think my one crazy prediction might not actually be one, very crazy at all, but at the same time, when it hasn't happened in 5.5 months, you never know. But there we have it, guys. My predictions for the US Grand Prix this weekend. I will be there. I will be seated. It is going to be electric, and I cannot wait for the weekend to get here, even more so than usual. What are you looking forward to at the US Grand Prix this weekend? Let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, if you made it this far into the video, leave a like rating. It really helps me out. And subscribe if you haven't already, and join our small buddy community. But guys, we'll be back on Sunday night, probably, because I will be recording my post-race video live from the track itself like I have the last couple of seasons. It's always a lot of fun. Going to these weekends is a benefit that I'll never get tired of, and I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity that I have to do so. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to be there with everyone. It's going to be electric, and it always is. I hope the weather holds out. It looks like it's going to be beautiful out, so we'll see if it holds. But until then, guys, I'll see you in the next one.